My girlfriend gave me an ultimatum. Hand over your savings or stop calling yourself my man. I answered, understood, and ended the relationship on the spot and moved on with my life. My name is Eric. I am 34 years old. I work in project management for a construction firm and live in a mid-sized city in the Pacific Northwest. My days are structured and repetitive by choice. Early mornings, long hours, evenings at home. I save aggressively and avoid unnecessary risk because I grew up watching money problems destroy people. My girlfriend's name is Vanessa. She is 31. We had been together just over 2 years and did not live together, though she spent most weekends at my place. We did not share accounts. No joint purchases. No kids. Clean separation on paper, even if the relationship felt emotionally tangled. When we first met, Vanessa was confident and sharp. She spoke quickly, knew what she wanted, and liked to test people. I mistook that for strength. Over time, it became something else. She liked control, but never directly. It always came dressed as standards, expectations, or what a real man would do. Money was always a quiet undercurrent. She made decent money, but spent like it was temporary. I made more and saved most of it. She noticed. She joked about it at first. Called me boring. Said I lived like a divorced dad. I laughed it off because it felt harmless then. 6 months ago, the jokes stopped being jokes. She started talking about shared futures in a very specific way. Upgrades, better places, trips, investments she had ideas about. Anytime I asked how she planned to contribute, she'd say couples don't nickel and dime each other. Anytime I said I wasn't comfortable funding everything, she'd say I was afraid of commitment. Last week it finally came to a head. We were sitting in my kitchen after dinner. She was irritated about something unrelated and scrolling on her phone. Out of nowhere, she said she was tired of feeling like she was dating a man who didn't fully claim her. I asked what that meant. She looked at me and said if I wanted to call myself her man, I needed to hand over my savings so we could build something together. Otherwise, I should stop pretending I was serious. It wasn't framed as a discussion. It was an ultimatum. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I said understood. And that's where everything changed. I stood up and started clearing the table. Vanessa was still sitting there, arms crossed, watching me like she expected the silence to make me cave. She asked if I was seriously just going to ignore what she said. I told her I heard her perfectly. Then I told her the relationship was over. She laughed at first. Not amused laughter. Dismissive laughter. The kind she used whenever she thought I was bluffing. She said I was being dramatic and that I needed to sit back down so we could talk like adults. I didn't sit. I walked into the bedroom and grabbed the overnight bag she always kept there. The one she never fully unpacked but treated like a permanent fixture. I opened it and started putting her things inside. Clothes, makeup, charger, the toothbrush she left in my bathroom cup like she owned the place. That's when her tone changed. She followed me down the hall asking what I thought I was doing. I told her calmly that she gave me a choice and I answered. I wasn't handing over my savings and I wasn't pretending to be anything for her. So she needed to leave. She said I couldn't just kick her out. She said it was late. She said she drove here. She said real men don't throw women out over a disagreement. I told her real men don't get extorted by their girlfriends. That set her off. She started listing everything she thought she brought to my life. Her time, her energy, her support. She said I was selfish. She said I was cheap. She said any woman would expect access to her man's money if he was serious. I zipped the bag and handed it to her. I opened the front door and stood there quietly, holding it open. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I didn't argue point by point. I just waited. The lack of reaction enraged her more than anything else. She accused me of being cold. She accused me of wasting her time. She said I would regret this and come crawling back once I realized how hard it was to find someone like her. I told her to take care of herself. She stood there for a long moment like she expected me to stop her. When I didn't, she grabbed the bag out of my hand and stormed out, muttering under her breath. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a second. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from her that said you're making a huge mistake. I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to the kitchen to finish cleaning up dinner like nothing had happened. That was the night my life got a lot quieter. I woke up the next morning to 32 notifications. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that bounced between rage and panic so fast, it almost felt scripted. The first few accused me of overreacting. The next few accused me of being abusive. By the end of the thread, she was bargaining, asking if we could just talk like adults and reset. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I did something boring. I went to work. That probably sounds trivial, but it mattered. Vanessa thrived on emotional urgency. Crises. Big moments. Me clocking in like it was any other Tuesday robbed the situation of oxygen. Around noon, I checked my phone once. She had switched tactics. Now she was texting about how she felt used. How she had invested 2 years of her life in me. How she couldn't believe I threw her out instead of trying to compromise. That word again. Compromise. What she meant by compromise was me giving in after enough pressure. I replied once, and only once. I told her the relationship was over and not to contact me again. She responded immediately. Paragraphs. Accusations. She said I proved I was never a real man. She said real men provide. She said money is just money, and I was choosing numbers over love. She ended with, if you don't unblock me right now, don't ever expect to hear from me again. I blocked her. That afternoon, my sister texted me asking what happened. Vanessa had already called her crying, telling her I kicked her out and abandoned her over a misunderstanding. I told my sister the truth in 3 sentences. Ultimatum. Savings. Relationship ended. My sister replied with 1 word. Good. When I got home that evening, the apartment felt different. Not empty. Just neutral. Like it finally belonged to me again. No tension hanging in the air. No commentary. No subtle digs disguised as jokes. I cooked dinner. Ate quietly. Cleaned up. Later, while taking out the trash, I noticed something small but telling. Vanessa had left one of her earrings on the counter. Something she definitely would have noticed if she hadn't been so confident I'd chase her. I threw it away. That night she tried again through email. New account. Same message. She said she didn't mean the ultimatum literally. She said I misunderstood. She said couples test each other sometimes to see how committed they are. That was when it fully clicked. She wasn't angry that I said no. She was angry that her leverage didn't work. And once I understood that, there was nothing left to debate. 2 days passed before Vanessa showed up again. This time she didn't text first. She didn't call. She just appeared outside my building right as I was getting home from work, standing by the entrance like she still had a claim to the place. Same coat. Same posture. Arms folded tight. Jaw set. Already rehearsing whatever speech she planned to deliver. She said we needed to talk. I told her we didn't. That set her off immediately. She said I couldn't just end things like that. She said adults don't throw away relationships over one bad conversation. She said I owed her a discussion because she had invested time in me. I told her time spent doesn't turn extortion into commitment. She snapped back that I was twisting her words again. That she never wanted my savings for herself. She said she wanted security. She wanted proof I was serious. She wanted to know she wasn't wasting her prime years on a man who would never fully step up. I asked her why stepping up only ever involved my money. She ignored the question and switched tactics. She said I embarrassed her. She said kicking her out made me look unstable. She said she told her friends what I did, and they were shocked. She emphasized that word like it was supposed to shame me. I told her I didn't care what her friends thought. That seemed to surprise her. She accused me of changing. Said I'd become cold and transactional. Said the man she fell for would never choose money over love. I told her the man she fell for would never tolerate being threatened. People started walking past us. She lowered her voice, but got sharper. She said if I didn't fix this now, I would regret it. She said women talk. She said my reputation would take a hit. She said no woman would feel safe with a man who throws his girlfriend out. I told her she was free to leave whenever she wanted, and she was free to tell whatever story helped her sleep at night. She stood there staring at me, clearly waiting for something. An apology. A crack. Any sign that the pressure was working. When it didn't come, she scoffed and said fine. She said I'd come crawling back once I realized how hard dating was in your 30s. I told her not to come back again. She laughed like I was bluffing and walked away. I went upstairs, locked my door, and added her name to the building's do not admit list. That was the moment I stopped thinking of this as a breakup. It was an extraction. Vanessa didn't come back in person after that, but she didn't disappear either. She went digital. By the next morning, mutual friends started reaching out with carefully worded messages. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. Vanessa's really hurt. Each one followed the same arc: concern first. Pressure second. They all wanted to know if I was really sure I wanted to end things over money. I corrected them calmly. I told them it wasn't about money. It was about an ultimatum. I told them anyone who threatens a relationship to gain access to someone else's savings is not asking for partnership. They're asking for control. Some people backed off immediately. A few went quiet. One friend admitted Vanessa had been complaining for months that I was holding out on her financially and that she deserved more. That confirmed everything. Vanessa tried another angle that afternoon. She emailed me a long message titled Clarity. In it, she reframed the ultimatum as a test. She said she needed to know I'd choose us over fear. She said strong couples share everything. She said my reaction proved I wasn't emotionally mature enough for a real future. She ended it by saying she was willing to forgive me if I apologized and showed I was serious by opening up financially. I laughed out loud reading that. Not because it was funny, because it was revealing. She genuinely believed she still had leverage. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to a folder labeled Done and blocked the address. That evening I did something I'd been putting off for months. I logged into my bank accounts and updated beneficiaries. I reviewed my savings plan. I scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor I'd been meaning to call anyway. Not because of her, but because I could finally make decisions without someone hovering over them. Later that night, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. The voicemail was Vanessa, crying now. No anger. No threats. Just disbelief. She said she never thought I'd actually walk away. She said she thought I'd push back a little and then give in like always. That last sentence stuck with me. Like always. I blocked the number. That was the moment I understood something important. The ultimatum wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy that finally failed. And once it failed, there was nothing left for the relationship to stand on. A week went by before Vanessa tried one last escalation. She showed up at my work. Not inside. In the parking lot right after my shift ended. I saw her leaning against her car like this was some dramatic movie moment and not a real workplace with cameras and policies. She smiled when she saw me, like we were about to have a reconciliation scene. I kept walking. She called my name louder this time and followed me a few steps, saying we needed closure. That word again. Closure. The word people use when they want one more chance to regain control of the narrative. I turned and told her calmly that this was inappropriate and she needed to leave. I said if she came back again, I would involve security. Her smile vanished instantly. She said I was heartless. She said she couldn't believe I was choosing money over her. She said any woman would expect her man to prove commitment. She said I was selfish and afraid to invest in a future. I told her the future doesn't start with threats. That was when she crossed the line. She said if I didn't talk to her, she would tell people I financially abused her. She said she'd say I led her on, promised things, and then pulled the rug out. She said people would believe her. I didn't raise my voice. I told her to do whatever she needed to do and walked away. That was the last time I saw her in person. That night, I emailed HR just in case and documented the encounter. I also sent a brief message to a lawyer friend asking what my options were if harassment continued. Not because I wanted to escalate, but because I wanted the situation contained. The next day, Vanessa posted vague statements online about betrayal and manipulation. Comments poured in. Some sympathetic, some skeptical. A few people asked questions she didn't answer. I didn't respond. I noticed something interesting during this phase. The more calm and consistent I stayed, the more erratic she looked by comparison. She needed reaction. Without it, her story lost coherence. By the end of the week, the posts stopped. Silence replaced noise. And in that silence, I realized how much of my energy had been spent managing someone else's expectations instead of living my own life. That realization mattered more than any argument we ever had. Once the noise stopped, something else crept in. Doubt from other people. Not from me. From the outside. A couple of friends asked if I was okay. Then they asked if I was sure I hadn't been too harsh. They said Vanessa could be intense, but meant well. They said money can make people say things they don't fully mean. The implication was clear. I should have softened it. I should have negotiated. I listened and didn't argue. What I noticed was that none of them questioned the ultimatum itself. They questioned my refusal to play along with it. That was telling. Vanessa resurfaced indirectly a few days later through a mutual friend. She wanted to know if I had cooled off. She said she was willing to compromise now. She said maybe she had phrased things badly, but her intentions were good. She said she didn't actually want all of my savings, just access. Transparency. A gesture. I told the friend to pass along one message. Ultimatums don't get renegotiated after they fail. That apparently landed harder than anything else I'd said so far. According to the friend, Vanessa was furious. Not sad. Not reflective. Furious. She said I was punishing her for being honest. She said men like me only care about control. She said I'd end up alone because no woman wants a man who refuses to provide. I let it go. That weekend I did something small but symbolic. I went through my apartment and removed everything that reminded me of her. Not dramatically, just practically. Photos deleted. Gifts boxed up. I didn't throw them away. I donated what I could. The rest went in storage. The space changed immediately. Not emotionally. Physically. Less clutter. Fewer objects that came with commentary. It felt like breathing room. That night, I realized something I hadn't fully articulated before. Vanessa didn't want partnership. She wanted access without accountability. She wanted security without limits. And she framed entitlement as commitment, so I'd feel guilty resisting it. Once I saw that clearly, there was no version of the relationship worth saving. The ultimatum wasn't the end. It was the reveal. And once something reveals itself that cleanly, the only logical move is to step away and keep going. About 2 weeks after everything went quiet, I heard through someone else that Vanessa was telling a new version of the story. In this one, the ultimatum never happened. According to her, we broke up because I was emotionally unavailable and obsessed with money. She said I refused to plan a future. She said she finally stood up for herself and I couldn't handle it. It was a cleaner narrative. One where she was strong and wronged instead of reckless. I didn't correct it. People who mattered already knew me well enough to see the gaps. People who didn't were never going to hear the truth anyway. I stopped treating reputation like something I had to manage. What had surprised me was how fast she tried to replace the relationship. A mutual friend mentioned she was suddenly dating again. Very publicly. Posts about standards. About knowing her worth. About not settling for men who are afraid to invest. The captions were pointed enough that no one missed the target. I scrolled past them without reacting. Instead, I noticed how calm my days had become. No more financial arguments disguised as philosophical debates. No more hints. No more pressure to prove myself through spending. I paid my bills, invested as planned, and slept without that constant low-level tension I'd normalized for years. One evening I ran into someone who knew both of us. They asked if I was okay now that Vanessa had moved on so fast. I said I was fine and meant it. Moving on quickly is usually a sign of avoiding reflection, not healing. That night, I went back through old messages for the first time in a while. Not to relive them, but to understand the pattern. The jokes about my savings. The digs about being cheap. The way every disagreement ended with her questioning my masculinity. It was all there. I just hadn't wanted to label it. The ultimatum wasn't a sudden escalation. It was the natural conclusion of months of pressure. She didn't wake up one day and demand my savings. She worked toward that moment expecting compliance. And when compliance didn't come, she didn't adjust. She detonated. Seeing it laid out, that clearly erased any lingering doubt. I hadn't overreacted. I'd simply stopped playing a role I was never meant to accept. By the end of that week, her name stopped coming up at all. Life didn't feel exciting. It felt stable. And after what I'd just stepped out of, stability felt like a win. The last time Vanessa tried to pull me back in, it was subtle. No messages. No surprise appearances. Just a mutual friend mentioning, almost casually, that Vanessa had been asking about me. Not how I was doing. Whether I was dating yet. Whether I seemed happy. Whether I regretted anything. That told me everything. She didn't miss me. She missed the leverage. Apparently, she'd been telling people she expected me to reach out eventually. That men like me always do once the shock wears off. That I'd realize she was right about money and commitment and come back ready to prove it. Weeks passed. I didn't reach out. I started dating again, slowly and without announcing it. Coffee dates. Conversations without power games. No tests. No ultimatums disguised as standards. I noticed how easy things felt when expectations were spoken plainly instead of implied and enforced through guilt. One night, I got a message request from an account with no profile picture. It was Vanessa, a new number. She said she hoped I was well. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. She said maybe we both made mistakes. She said she didn't mean the ultimatum the way it came out. She said she just wanted reassurance and security. She asked if we could talk like adults now that emotions had cooled. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I was tempted, because I was struck by how familiar the script felt. Reframing. Softening. Inviting me back into a conversation where she could slowly reset the terms. I replied with one sentence. I'm not interested in reopening this. Then I blocked the account. No follow-up. No explanation. No debate. After that, nothing. No more messages. No more indirect pressure. No more stories aimed in my direction. The chapter closed not with drama, but with disinterest. And that felt right. Because the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. and I had finally reached it. It has been several months since that night in my kitchen, and nothing dramatic followed. No surprise apology. No grand realization on her part. No moment where she admitted she crossed a line. Real life doesn't give you those clean endings. It just moves forward once you stop feeding the conflict. Vanessa is gone from my day-to-day life completely now. I don't hear about her anymore. Mutual friends stopped updating me once they realized I wasn't waiting for news. Her name doesn't trigger anything when it comes up in passing. It's just information, like hearing about someone you used to work with. What changed most wasn't my finances or my routines. It was my tolerance. I no longer negotiate my boundaries. I don't explain why an ultimatum is unacceptable. I don't argue with someone who thinks commitment means control or that love is proven through financial surrender. If someone shows me who they are that clearly, I take them at their word and act accordingly. Looking back, the ultimatum wasn't about money. It was about power. She wanted to know if she could threaten my identity as a man to get what she wanted. She wanted to see if I would panic, overcorrect, and hand over control to keep the relationship intact. She expected resistance followed by surrender. Instead, she got agreement and an ending. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't try to win the argument. I simply opted out of the situation entirely and went on with my life. That choice did more than any confrontation ever could. My life now is quieter, steadier, and free of constant tests. The savings she wanted access to are still mine. More importantly, so is my peace. If there's any takeaway here, it's this. When someone ties your worth to compliance, believe them the first time. And when someone gives you an ultimatum meant to corner you, remember that walking away is also an answer. It just happens to be the one that ends the game entirely.
I will never forget too. So you're from the Houston area. I was on the news in the Houston area for 28 years. And I will never forget, as I was going through menopause, there were some nights when I anchored the 10 o'clock news, the 6 and 10. And I used to love to do breaking news coverage. Loved it because the thrill of having to string together thoughts and concepts and what's happening and talk to officials and this and that. When I was going through menopause, I was dreading breaking news coverage, Renee, because I didn't think that I could complete a sentence. I didn't think that I could grasp the word that I needed to be able to articulate what was going on. And it freaked me out. And you lose confidence in yourself, right? The abilities that you once had suddenly seem to be vanishing along with everything else. And it's a thing, and it's a hormonal thing. And I'm curious, I'm going to ask you about your HRT